This story is a little bit hard for me to tell, mainly because I still work for this company and for the guy who got me this job. So I will give you some background information about me, but please, please, please understand that I cannot share everything with you. And for one moment, think about someone other than yourself and realize that I have a family to feed. Now, as you are aware, there are a few major railroad companies in America: Norfolk Southern, Canadian Pacific, KC Southern, and many more. But what most people don't realize is that the railroad companies were the original American monopolies. They were what Facebook, Google, and Twitter are today. But when it comes to sheer power and ruthlessness, nobody, and I mean nobody, compares to the railroad industry. I know this for a fact because I've worked for them for over 34 years. Criminals and cartels using trains to smuggle drugs and guns all over the United States. If I were to share with you some of the things that I've seen and been involved with, you would lose it would shatter the reality of what you believe to be true. I'm talking about things ranging from just dumb people pulling out on the tracks and their cars getting stuck, all the way up to nuclear warheads being stolen, moved across country, trains being bombed by fighter jets, and the news tells you that it was a train derailment. You guys have absolutely no clue the level of chicanery that goes on with our railroad system. But this particular series of events happened in 2016. I'm away from work on a 2-week vacation with my wife and my grandchildren. He says, "Hey, I need you to do us both a favor. Fly out tomorrow. They're looking for a train driver. It's an off-the-books operation, one-way trip. They fly you back home when you're done. The pay is $15,000. You keep 10, I keep 5, just for me bringing this to you." Now, remember, I told you, I've seen some things, done some things when it comes to this railroad. And this is exactly how I saw them. These smaller off-the-books deals, sometimes involving narcotics, other times off-the-book black operations. Remember, I told you I'd seen some things, and this is how I saw them. We go through the normal back and forth, how's your family, how's your kids, while I'm thinking and trying to decide if this is something I need to do. And during that conversation, it hits me. My wife, my beautiful wife, had just ran up our American Express bill. Why? Trying to help her idiot brother who can't keep a job under any circumstances. You see, him and his wife were in the process of losing their house when my wife comes to me and says, "Babe, we really need to bail them out of this situation." My stance was a firm no. She and I went back and forth and I articulated to her, "Listen, babe, the only way people understand how to hold on to money is when they pay the consequences. As long as your brother doesn't pay any consequences for his actions, he will continue to spend money like a wild man. Him and his wife will continue to dig holes like this for themselves. So I'm not putting up a dime to bail them out." Through a long story short, through a wild series of events, my wife calls their mortgage company, pays $8,000 to help them get a loan modification. Picture this, I'm standing there in the kitchen, phone to my head, listening to his voice through one ear, my mind replaying the original conversation I had with my wife where I told her no, and I tell him, "Listen, I'll do it. I could use the $10,000 to pay off this credit card debt that my wife has ran up with a stupid-ass brother." So we agree. Get off the phone. Now I'm walking into the bedroom to pack my bag and explain to my wife where I'm about to go. That turns into another argument. This is supposed to be our vacation. Where are you going? Why are you going to do stuff? And I'm sitting there telling her, "Listen, honey, I'll be back in 2 days. It's all good. I just need you to chill for these 2 days by yourself." She's adamant about me not going. So I walk over to our file cabinet where we kept all our receipts and pull out the $8,000 American Express card bill, place it on the bed, and tell her, "Unless you're going to make the money to pay this $8,000 off or your brother's going to pay us back, I need to go do this job and take care of this bill." Now, if there's one thing I can tell you about my wife, she knows when she's won an argument and she knows when she's lost an argument. So she walks over to the dresser and starts taking out clothes to help me pack, and we don't say another word about it. The next morning, I'm on a flight headed to a town near the southern border. I get picked up in a black SUV, blindfolded, and driven for what seemed like about an hour or so. When we arrive and I'm finally escorted out of that SUV, I'm walked blindfolded for about a good 200 paces. Now, I know what you're thinking. What the f is going on? This dude can't be telling the truth. But believe me when I tell you, this is how it all goes down. I assumed as usual that they were taking precautions and they had compartmentalized the travel of this train to make sure that not one individual knew everything about what was going on. We're walking for a while, reach a point and stop. Now I can hear the train slowly moving in our direction. People talking. Next you hear what sounds like typical loading equipment, forklifts, and to this day my mind still struggles to completely comprehend everything I heard, but I know for a fact I heard somebody saying, hey, slowly, move slowly. Now lift it up, careful, slowly. I hear the brakes on the train as it comes to a complete stop. Then I'm walked to the left, and we stand there for another 15 minutes as I assume they continue to load the train. As I hear multiple people moving back and forth, but mostly one person talking, giving orders like, load that first. Good job, gentlemen, good job. One more, and we're done. Careful. Slowly. We don't want it waking up, slowly. And there was one point in time where that man with the commanding voice was extremely close. I could tell it was him, but I couldn't quite make out everything that was being said because he was talking in hushed tones. And a few minutes later, my blindfold is taking off, and I'm standing at the front of the train, handed an envelope, and told to get her moving. Looking back, I was only pulling 5 cars. Talk about a small load. Somebody had gone through a lot of trouble to make this happen. Now, on board the train, I open the envelope, and my instructions are very, very simple. Drive this train for 500 miles. Do not stop under any circumstances. Do not open any of the train cars under any circumstances. Do not allow anyone else to open the train cars under any circumstances. Inside, looking around the cabin where I was, I noticed several high-powered rifles, handguns. Honestly, a whole bunch of stuff was in there that I figured I didn't have a need of using or having at all. That's when this gentleman boards the train, introduces himself as Tom. He says, listen, I'm here to make sure everything for you goes all right. Let's get this train moving. Now, Tom, and I doubt seriously if this was his real name, Tom looked like he ate people for a living. You know how some men have that look in their eyes? Like there's this thin membrane holding back all the death, murder, and destruction that's inside of them. That's what Tom looked like. He wasn't particularly a big guy, no more than 6'2", 6'3", slender, well-defined muscles. But you can tell that he wasn't the guy that you wanted to play with. He looks at me and said, hey, let's get this train moving. But it wasn't until I put the train in motion and slowly started to pull off that I realized there was something different about this train. Now listen, every train has a pilot. And for those of you who don't understand what it is, a pilot is at the front of the train, and it's used to ensure that it can knock anything off the tracks that may cause the train to derail. Normally, the pilot is just flat. This pilot had been modified. It protruded outward on a 45-degree angle and had spikes on it, and extended 20 feet out in front of the train. As we're moving along, I look at Tom and said, hey, this is a weird pilot on this train. Why does it have spikes on it? What were we expecting to see on our way to our destination? Tom just replies, listen, we haven't seen anything on this trip thus far, and I'm hoping we don't see anything moving forward. This is the last leg of the trip. Let's just get this done and get it over with so we can get home safely. Now the train is moving along. Everything is going smooth, and I'm trying to make small talk with Tom. So, where you from, Tom? His eyes were locked on the tracks up ahead of us. They dart to the left. He gives me this quick look, saying, you really don't need to know or want to know any of that information. I noticed that he has a scar, and it runs between his pinky and his ring finger all the way up his wrist. And I said, well, Tom, okay, if we can't talk about where you're from, at least tell me the story of how you got that scar on your hand. Again, his eyes dart to the left, and he quickly says, those are claw marks. And jokingly, I reply, oh, I get it. You're one of those guys that goes to Africa and does the big game hunting. Man, I never understood people who do stuff like that. Expecting him to bite on that line, he doesn't. he just stands there quietly staring at the tracks. It was right then and there that I realized that this guy wasn't going to freaking talk to me at all, so screw it. Let's just get this train where it needs to go, and I'm going to keep my mouth closed. We had been riding along for about an hour and a half when we felt the first jolt. And by jolt, I mean something at the rear of the train had moved and transferred that force through every car all the way up to the locomotive. We both felt it. I look over at Tom, and he doesn't seem to be bothered by this one bit, but I am. I've been on trains my whole life, and I know the type of force that it takes in order to make something like that happen. And if we had cargo on board with that kind of force, it meant only one or two things. Either they had put some form of liquid inside of the train cars that as I pulled off, it started sloshing back and forth, and that perpetual back and forth movement had made it slide, and I was banging into either the front or the back of one of the train cars. Or they had loaded something or someone else inside of those train cars that was way more dangerous than I could ever imagine. I wouldn't call myself a conspiracy theorist because I've seen a lot of in my life. And I believe in everything. I believe that our government has men who can transform into the Hulk like on TV. I believe there's a Superman. I believe in Batman. I believe that the inspiration for all these different characters comes from people somewhere around the planet or in another universe that are really alive. So now with nothing else to do, my mind is racing, thinking, okay, what the f do they have in the back of this train? Now, jokingly, I say to Tom, man, with a train shifted like that, feel like y'all got some Jurassic Park type in the back of this train. But he never takes his eyes off the track ahead of us. We spend the next 30 minutes in silence. I'm looking down into my bag, digging around, trying to get me some bubble gum and some water, when I hear Tom say, "Did you see that? What was that?" Quickly shifting my eyes up to the train tracks, I don't see anything. He tells me he just saw something dart across the track up ahead. And I gotta explain to you the look on this man's face. He had the look in his eyes like something or someone was there to actually kill him. So I try to explain to him, Tom, listen, when a train moves down a track through a lightly wooded area like this, the animals feel the vibration of the train, and it causes them to panic, and they dart back and forth across the track. I tell him I've been on jobs where confused deer would dart back and forth across the track, trying to figure out which direction to go into, until eventually they got hit. And I don't know why at this point I was trying to reassure him, but I was. Tom, it was probably nothing more than a deer. Over the next 30 miles, the terrain began to change. Originally, it was low-density forest, but as we moved further, the woods became more and more dense. Something that I really, really enjoy. Opening the window, letting some fresh air in. I love the smell of the woods, that cool breeze coming in. And that smell of nature, you know how it is when you're out in the woods. It's so much better than anything you experience living in the city. As I'm opening that window, we feel the train jolt again. Honestly, this time it's 3 times harder than it was originally. To me, it felt like the Incredible Hulk was in one of those train cars behind us, and he was pissed off. Because of the noise that the train made, I couldn't hear any sounds, but I could tell by the look on Tom's face that he was getting concerned. Because he grabs one of the rifles, opens the door, and heads out the side of the train. Now, to be clear with you, I've been riding on trains my whole life, and that's what you just don't do. You don't go outside of a moving train under any circumstances. But he does it. Him making that decision immediately let me know that we weren't transporting no liquid fluids. We was transporting something that was extremely dangerous. Concerned for his well-being, I start to slow the train down. I walk over to the side where he was standing, peek my head out, and now I see him literally climbing up to the top of the moving train car. So I slow it down even more. My eyes are no longer on the track because I'm trying to figure out what the hell he's doing on top of the train. He's moved out of my eyesight when I hear this impact towards the front of the train. When I turn my head and look, all I see is blood on that pallet at the front of the train. So now I'm screaming, Tom, 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 trying to get his attention, because normally when you hit something on a track and you're not sure exactly what it is, You slow the train down, stop, take a look, and make sure it wasn't an actual human being. But my instructions were specific. Do not stop this train under any circumstances. So for the next 10 minutes, the train is still moving along. I'm there panicking, freaking out, because I'm not sure what the hell I just hit. In my mind, I'm thinking, nah, it couldn't have been a person. No person's going to walk out in front of a train with this kind of pilot on the front of it. You would have to be freaking insane in order to do something like this. Finally, Tom climbs back inside the cabin with me. I tell him, listen, we hit something, and I don't know what the fuck it was. I was too busy looking back at you. I took my eyes off the tracks, and next thing you know, there's blood everywhere. Now, this was the first time that Tom had literally squared his body to mine, looked me straight in the eyes, and said, listen, I need you to get this train up to speed, and no matter what happens, no matter what you hear, no matter what you see, do not slow this train down. Do you understand? And I realized I had to look like a confused, scared child as I'm nodding my head, because he repeated it again. This is an order. Do not slow this train down again. No matter what I do or what you hear, do not slow this train down. It is way too dangerous if you slow it down. And it's at this point in time when he and I have this slight disagreement that leads to him putting a loaded pistol to my head. Because I simply say, Tom, I don't know if you know this, but I can't make this train go any faster than 65 miles an hour. In fact, I'm not supposed to go any faster than 59 miles per hour. And that's when this man pulls his gun from his holster, takes a step back, and points it directly at my head, saying, make the train go faster. You're not listening to me. Make the train go faster. So now I'm making the train go faster. Keep in mind, this is not my train. This is their train. So I look at him and tell him, you know what? If this bitch derails, at least both of us are going to die together. So I start to bring the train up to speed faster. We move from 45 miles per hour to 55, from 55 to 60, from 60 to 65. And then the PTC system kicks in. He looks at me and says, why are we not going any faster? And I explained to him, Tom, somebody on your end did not disable the PTC system, which combined with the other systems limit the speed of the train. If you wanted this train to go any faster than this, then you guys should have consulted with one of us first, and we could have removed the systems, and we could go 150 miles per hour in this, but we can't because the system is intact. And now I'm pissed off because he's standing there with a pistol pointed at my head, not realizing that I've been in the same situation before with way worse people than him. And the best way to get my cooperation is not to put a gun to my head. So I tell him, Tom, the best way to get me to cooperate with you is not to put a gun to my head, but explain to me what the is going on and why we need to remove this system. If you talk to me, maybe we can work together and get the issue resolved. But pointing a gun at my head is not going to get you anywhere, because if you shoot me, what happens to the train, Tom? How do you move the train if you put the bullet in my head, Tom? And you can tell by the look in this man's eyes that everything that he's accomplished in life, he's done it by brute force. He puts the gun down and he says, listen, we need to get this train moving faster and get to the rendezvous location because there are other parties interested in rescuing the cargo. So now I'm putting two and two together in my head thinking, okay, we got some kind of high value target on the train. And under those circumstances, there's no telling who or what number of people they're going to send to try and recover this high value target. Now, even though he just put his gun back in his holster, I feel more comfortable because at least now I have a clue as to what the is going on. So I tell him, Tom, keep your eyes on the tracks as I go and try and disable the system. And the biggest problem that we had is whoever was on this train before me didn't disable the speed limiter. Now moving towards one of the control boxes, I opened it up and realized that someone else had recently been inside. You can see where someone had already tried to tamper with the speed limiter. When I see Tom again grabbing a rifle and going outside of the train. And I'm thinking to myself, this is psychotic. And I hope he gets his dumb ass on top of this train because I'm about to make it go 100 miles an hour, and he falls to his death. It takes me about 5 minutes to bypass the speed limiter. The only limitation to the speed of this train was the limits of the train itself. So now I'm bringing it up faster. We're going 75 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour. Somehow Tom's crazy ass is still outside of the train, and that's when I start to hear gunfire. And not like brrr, automatic gunfire shots. Tom is on top of the train, and he's firing off these single shots. Pow! 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 But looking out, he's too far back for me to see exactly what he's shooting at. The train jolts again, and I'm like, what the f is going on? So now I find myself opening the door to a moving train, holding on, leaning out, trying to see what the f is going on. And let me tell you, that was the first and the only time I stuck my whole body outside that train to take a look. Because running along the side of that train were 5 gigantic wolves running along, trying to keep pace with the train. And when I say gigantic wolves, one of these things was the size of a mini Fiat. We're talking about big freaking wolves. Now, I'm standing there in shock, staring at the tracks, trying to figure out what the f have I got myself into, when Tom climbs back into the cabin like nothing strange or weird is going on. There was this awkward silence as I stood there thinking to myself, do I ask this man what he was shooting at, or do I just ignore this and pray that we get to where we're going? But I could not hold this question back. Tom, what the f are those gigantic wolves that are trying to run down this train? He looks at me and says, those are the interested parties that I was telling you about, and that is the reason why you cannot slow this train down. I tell him, listen, Tom, this is my job. I know what I'm doing. If we move any faster than this, we could have a serious problem on our hands. I try to tell him we won't be able to slow down at all if anything is laying across these tracks. We need to maintain this speed. Listen to me. For the rest of the duration of this trip, Tom continues to climb in and out of the cabin to the top of a train that is moving at this point in time 80 miles an hour and starts firing rounds at these wolves. Now listen to me. It was at this point in time that I was able to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. We weren't transporting any kind of dangerous fluid or liquids or any high-value target human being. We were transporting one of these wolves. And these things had to be super dangerous because the closer we got to our destination, I started to notice other men in the woods with rifles. And let me explain to you the actual destination that we got to. Imagine pulling up to a gigantic stone wall, machine guns on top, gates wide open, the train pulling in. This looked like some Nazi Germany type. Believe me, up until that point, I thought that we were still inside the United States of America. But based on what I was seeing, there's no way, absolutely no way that that type of was built inside of our country. Because if they built like that in the United States of America, then we have problems because the citizens don't know anything. When we arrive inside of this place, they close the gates. Tom climbs back in, blindfolds me, and escorts me off of the train. Listen to this. They load me into a helicopter. And before the door closes, Tom says, you did a wonderful job under the circumstances. And if we need your assistance, we will call upon you again. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, you crazy. This is my last time ever doing anything like this. The helicopter takes off. We fly for a long time. Land, I'm put into another SUV. And when the hood is finally taken off my head, I'm back at the original airport where they picked me up at. I take the last flight home, get to the parking garage. I'm just sitting there in my truck. Cell phone rings. It's my friend who got me into this in the first place. He says, hey, I don't know what you did, but they sent us $35,000. I'm wiring everything to you except for my 5. And the next time one of these jobs come up, I'll get in contact with you again. Now, I realize there are going to be people who listen to the story and say, oh, it's a lie. And that's fine with me. But I've told you everything that I can tell you while simultaneously telling you nothing at all. And if you can't read between the lines and get to the truth, then that's on you.